Hello. I am so happy to introduce to you Mr. Byron Chapman as the Humanities Teacher of the Year for this year. And I want to tell you just a short little paragraph or so about why I decided to choose Mr. Chapman. As chair of the Division of Humanities, I was asked to choose someone. And each year as I do that, it gets harder and harder and harder because we have some good people. Mr. Chapman is a new faculty member, and he has an evangelistic zeal for building the Russ College English program. I think we're going places. He's making a real difference. The thing, though, that really made me decide that he was our man this year was his dissertation, his doctoral dissertation on Miss Natalie Doxey. It is so easy to lose our histories. And I was so happy when I realized what he was writing his doctoral dissertation on, because we need to know where we come from. And I feel that this program that we're about to see now is going to be a wonderful program, and I think it's something that we're going to be showing our students to help our students realize where we came from, and therefore we have some work to do to get back where we came from. Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
All right, hello. My name is Byron Chapman. I am the Director of Bands and also Associate Professor of Music here at Russ College. Today I will be presenting part of my research on the history of the choir program here at Russ College. So before I start, I would like to start off with one selection from the earliest recordings of the a cappella choir here at Russ College. All of my help comes from the Lord. All right, just to reiterate again, this piece is from a tribute to Natalie Doxey. This is right after her retirement. However, she was still working with the choir program at the time, so this is, again, the earliest recording that we actually have on file here at the college. So the title again is the ambassador of goodwill. This phrase was constantly used out through the writings describing Miss Natalie Doxey, saying that as an ambassador of the institution, going out and spreading goodwill or good news or the good gospel to raise awareness about Rusk College. So the name of the project is a historical study of Natalie Doxey and the Rusk College world-renowned a cappella choir. The purpose of this study, we aiming to document the achievements of the a cappella choir and also trace the beginnings of the music department here so we can build on what has have already been established and move into the future. So before any major project, we also have to do a literature review. And we start the literature review by looking at the things that is based on the a cappella choir, and that is the spiritual. And the spirituals are slave songs that are improvised, and they were also performed in the field doing work. Also called work tune, game song, religious songs, and spirituals. And these spirituals that are world-renowned are known by the a cappella choir are African American classical music or folk music in America, because it still follows the trajectory of Western culture. And also before the Civil War, spirituals function as coded messaging, like Wade by the Water, and other songs that let you know when it's time to escape or when it's time to lay low for a little while. So all the different songs have hidden meanings that they were known at the time, but as time goes on, those messages are lost, but we still have these pieces for concert selections. So the earliest a cappella choir, or the earliest choir that we know of that sings spirituals, is Hampton University. So this institution was founded in 1868, and the president at the time, Samuel Chapman, wanted to preserve the African American song. So students who were coming to Hampton University, he wanted to make sure that they were singing them on a regular basis, because directly after the Civil War and black people were freed, there was kind of a resistance to singing these songs because they reminded them so much of bondage. So the new students who were coming to the schools didn't want anything to do with it, but he wanted to make sure that they preserved their history. So again, have a sense of pride in their heritage, knowing where they came from, and also that he developed a Jubilee Singers, started touring in 1871 to raise money for Hampton University to help support the college financially. So this will be a picture of the earliest group during that time period. So again, Jubilee Singers at Hampton. And the next major institution that developed a cappella choir of Jubilee Singers is Fisk University. So again, it's another private institution in Nashville, Tennessee, founded the same year as Rusk College in 1866. And the original Jubilee Singers were put together and went on tours all in northern United States and also Europe from 1871 to 1878 to raise money, again, to help the institution stay afloat. The one thing that separates Hampton University and Fisk, at Hampton, they were past slaves that were actually participating in the Jubilee Singers, whereas Fisk University, they were the children of slaves. So there was kind of a rivalry between the two, where actual authentic slaves were singing the spirituals versus the children who are kind of trying to break away from that tradition. And also here at Fisk University, we have George White, who is the original director who put together the choir, and he wanted to raise the quality of the music. So he took the spirituals and he adapted Western culture qualities, like having dynamics, chord progressions, and also relegating the arrangements to SATB, which is the 4 parts for choir found in Western music, where in music, early spirituals, anybody can sing any part. So you can have a woman sing the bass and a male sing the soprano, whereas now we're following the strict rules of Western culture and elevating the spiritual to an art song. So it can be just as innovative as, let's say, Mozart or Beethoven. So it's fitting into the category, but it's strictly American, strictly African American. So again, heterophonic, that's almost like call and response, where we're getting away from, to more homophonic, where we, again, everybody's singing the same part, same words, same time, chord structure, cutting down the improvisation, make sure that everybody's singing together. And any melody that is written out, that's improvised is written out. So these things can be duplicated and can be controlled instead of each performance being totally different. So this is a picture of the early Fish Jubilee singers that toured for those couple of years. Also note that the group also, there were people that left the group and people that came into the group throughout the time that they traveled. So it was not necessarily the same group of people the entire time. And interestingly, majority of the singers were not in school or registered at school at FIS. So they were just making sure that they have the quality or authentic sound so they could tour and make sure they can raise money. And the last institution that we're going to talk about that has major significance is Tuskegee University. So after the Fish Jubilee Singers disband for raising enough money for the institution, Booker T. Washington, who was the president of Tuskegee, wanted to organize his own Jubilee Singers, and he sought out to recruit one of the Jubilee Singers from FIS to come be an instructor at Tuskegee. And one of the things that is interesting about Tuskegee is Nathaniel Clark Smith. He was the band director at Tuskegee, but he was quoted as the first African American to write down the spirituals. Whereas George White at FIS was Caucasian, and Nathaniel Smith was the first, again, African American to actually write this music. Spirituals that might have been lost, and different parts of the United States had different types of spirituals. So you have spirituals on the East Coast, you have spirituals in the Deep South. So from his childhood, he can write these musical compositions out. And this is a picture of the earliest picture that we can find of the Tuskegee Jubilee Singers. And we fall right along after that at Russ College. So we know the history. Originally named Shaw University, first private black college in Mississippi, 1866. Shaw was a clergyman that donated the money for the first building on campus, so we named it after him. And we had to change the name because there was another institution in North Carolina that was founded a couple of months before us. It was also named Shaw University. So we changed the name to Russ University in 1890. And after the secretary that also donated money after the original administration building burned down. And the college is affiliated with the United Methodist Church. Before we get to Natalie Doxey, there were early music ensembles here at Russ College before Ms. Doxey, but they were not known to tour, and they were just a campus-based ensemble, student-led ensembles. If they did spirituals, they were not close to the line to the Fish Jubilee Singers. So majority of just songs that were passed down from their parents or songs that they sang in church. So Natalie Doxey, born in Holly Springs, both her parents were ex-slaves. Father and mother married, and they were in the county, but they moved to the city of Holly Springs. And her father had a grocery store, and her brother attended the normal school here at Russ College. So the normal school is the primary school. So Russ College during this time had kindergarten through 12th grade, in which we consider the normal or primary grades. And they also had an on-campus college. So you could finish the primary grades and move on to the college on campus here at Russ College during that time. So she finished here with the primary grades and did 1 year of college before moving out to other institutions. So again, she finished here at the high school. Then she left at age 15 to go to Oberlin Conservatory. So this is one of the top music programs in the nation, or probably even in the world. So when she got there, it was noted that the only thing she knew was spirituals and how to play piano. And then she started taking lessons in voice, strings, and also learning how to read and perform music at a high caliber level. Then after attending an institution, she moved to Chicago and stayed in the YMCA and also attended the American Conservatory of Music, so another top-notch school of music that she's also affiliated with. Also, she did a lot of touring with operatic singers during this time period, accompanying soloists going overseas to Europe. I have documentation of her passport going over to Paris and Italy to tour with other opera and major streamed singers during that time. And After the passing of our father in the early 1930s, she came back to a commencement at Russ College, and she ran into somebody that had a beautiful voice that was actually the choir director before her, and this is Miss Ruby Elsie. I know her mother was on the board of Russ College, and I know one of the buildings is named in her honor. So in all actuality, we have more buildings on campus named after singers than anything else. So Ruby Elsie, born in Pontotoc, Mississippi, was actually a little bit older than Miss Doxey. So she attended school here and graduated and finished and came back before Miss Doxey even enrolled. Well, they probably would have been at the same time, but she graduated earlier. Again, she completed 1 year of college here before being found out. There was a recruiting trip to come down to historical black schools to check the quality, and there was a professor, Matt Kraken, that heard her practicing in the A building and invited her to study at the Ohio State University to further her music career. So she took up the opportunity to actually move and stay with their family while she attended the college. So after she finished, she was offered the job here as choir director, and she was performing at commencement, and this is when Natalie, Doxey, and Elsie met together and just offered her some insight saying that, you know, let's travel the world, let's see what else the world has to offer before you want to settle down. So she took that inspiration, and she was offered a scholarship to Juilliard. So she resigned in the middle of the school year and attended Juilliard. And so they were looking for somebody else to replace the choir director. And again, Doxey's father passed, and she wanted not to leave her mother here by herself. So her mother saw that it was an opportunity for her to continue her music by coming to work at Russ College. So this is where she started in the early 1930s. She finished her bachelor's degree in music here while teaching in 1931. Again, before the 1930s, Russ College Choir did not tour. So again, it was on campus, majority of the time, student-led ensemble. So she took this group. The president at the time asked her to develop a male quartet. And for her first year, they sent her to the United Methodist Conference in the North. And while she was there, she went to rehearsals at another Methodist college's Hamlin University and watched their rehearsals. And was very interested in learning more about the spiritual as it relates to Hampton University. And it was becoming a growing art form, and she wanted to learn more about it. So she returned in the next 6 years during the 1930s to learn more about this form of singing, also going to other conservatories, Eastman, and also studying at Juilliard herself while she was still an instructor here at Russ College. So this would be one of the earliest pictures that we have of the male quartet, also incorporating female singers at that time too. So again, in the 1930s, after touring and establishing the male quartet, they decided to start a music program here with Miss Natalie Doxey as chair in 1937. It is cited to be in the first a cappella choir as far as art music, singing high caliber music, music that is written down, music that can be copied, music that can be performed anywhere with any group, instead of just, you know, music that's, let's say, relegated to a certain church or that's based on how you feel. So we wanted to get to more academically sound music. So again, 1930s, this is still during the time of Jim Crow. So it was a lot of separation between blacks and whites, especially in Mississippi. So the tours that the choir had to go on were in the northern states. So Iowa, Michigan, the Dakotas, and they performed in areas around here, but they had to be black, heavily black influence. Again, at the number of the choir increased to raise money, that she broke the choir down into smaller quartets, SATB, one person per part, and sent them out to different locations so they can raise money for the school. And on tours, when they went out, they would usually stay with different families of the churches. So they didn't have to necessarily pay for a hotel or other accommodations. They also always had opportunities to work with people through the church, the people that invited them to perform. And as early as 1950, so even though that they established the music department students, it's still with little time before students can actually major and receive a degree, a liberal arts degree in music. So again, early pictures of the quartets that were sent out to raise money. So she would train the students here and give them a list or an area, make contact with churches and other institutions, and these groups would go out and perform, again, to pass out the good news or goodwill of the institution and raise money for the college and pass, the name recognition of Rusk College. Also, in 1940s, this is where her mother passed, so she was without father or mother, and she went into adopting one of the students in the choir that later became her replacement, Mrs. Holmes. This is also during the 1940s when the choir received the name as world renowned by touring in different parts of Europe and Africa, early as the 1940s. And during that first performance in the 40s in Ripley, Mississippi, performing for a white congregation in the South, which was pretty unheard of because of the rules of Jim Crow in Mississippi. And this was a major note that I found in the literature, especially written about the choir, as the choir was turning down invitations because the way they were being treated. Like even here in Holly Spring on a pilgrimage, going off the square into the historical homes that were here during the Civil War and before, they would ask the choir to perform, but when it's time to like offer them a meal or offer them beverages or after the performance, they wouldn't allow them to come in the house. But you invited them to come before the performance. And so they start turning down these invitations because of racial injustice. So Natalie, Doxey could be seen as one of the four barriers trying to be equal in all eyes. If we good enough to sing for you, then we good enough to step foot into your home for a glass of water. So again, as the choir grew, we started to incorporate more spirituals. It's been known by Miss Natalie Doxey to allow students to teach music to the choir, gospel music that was popular during that time, but always keep a high quality of music as far as making sure that all the voices in the SATB are represented, tone quality, musicality, so we can be accepted anywhere. So after retiring in 1967, where she not necessarily retired, she was still around, but she was getting older in age. So this is around the same time that the building, the Natalie Doxey Alumni Fine Arts Communication Center, was named in her honor, and it was built in her honor. Again, she adopted Ms. Holmes as a prodigy and also as a daughter, which became her replacement of the choir. And the highlight, in my opinion, of the a cappella choir is working with the Memphis State Orchestra with the conductor from the New York Philharmonic. And he's been cited to saying that this choir was wonderful. They knew their music. They came in with no folders. They performed all the repertoire from memory, and he had very little work to even do with them. So he was very surprised by the accomplishments or the reputation that the Rusk Choir, a cappella choir, has established and continued to maintain during that time. So again, we have the building, Music Fine Arts Building, that's named in her honor. There's also a office that's named after her too. In conclusion, one of the things that I found interesting was she continued to build her education even when she was teaching here, to attend other colleges and institutions. But my question to that is, are we able to reach out? I know that's be the next step of my project, to find more primary sources, to see what classes did she take, what was her interest, because she only held a bachelor's degree from Rusk College, but she attended all these other institutions, and it seems like from the writings that she didn't complete. So I'm very interested in what did she actually go to those colleges for, and what did she learn, and what did she incorporate into her teaching. Teaching method. After interviewing lots of people who are in the choir with her, I know Dr. Booker and other people who was here on campus that were actually were in the choir under Miss Natalie Doxey. She used the lining out method. So this method of teaching, she will sing or she will play a melody, and the student will repeat it until the student memorize it or become more comfortable. And this is the method that she chose to learn majority of the music. But it was a push for learning how to read notated music. But it's a lot of the times when you're getting students who only sang in church or sang as a hobby and trying to do academic music, this is one of the approaches that she felt she had to take to make sure that the students knew the music. Also, some of the things that she was noted for heavily was changing broken English within the spirituals to more proper grammar. Was saying that it's okay to get away from those negative terms or improper terms. So when you know better, you do better. So changing the English. Also, again, developing sight reading skills so the students can learn the music on their own and learn music at a faster rate. And also promoting a choir student family environment. So she was always based on getting students together. We are a family. We all are brothers and sisters, and we're going to figure out our situation no matter what. Musicality level of farmer boys and girls. So during this time, these are the first or second generations of slaves. And a lot of them in this area were still, sharecroppers. So we're attracting students who are of sharecroppers or sharecroppers themselves. So farmer boys and girls who are coming to school here to learn how to sing at a professional level, touring and representing the college. And also, one of the things that fall along in lines with Hampton and Fisk, even Tuskegee, that the choir was used to generate income for the institution. And even today, we are still going out raising funds, passing our goodwill on the name for Rest College through the a cappella choir. And for my last selection, Brighter Days. This is from the same album, the tribute to Natalie Doxey. And from my understanding, Natalie Doxey didn't have any recordings of her choir during her leadership. What I find quite interesting, or is none that we can actually put our hands on right now. So that is another primary source that we're actually looking for. So Brighter Days, I think this is a male quartet. So let's check it out.
There's a bright day. Mother used to tell me, oh, there's one somewhere. Yes, it is. There's a bright day. Oh, my mother used to tell me, there's one somewhere. Yes, it is. And if I keep on looking, my Lord, I believe one day I'll find, oh Lord, a brighter day, brighter day, somewhere, oh Lord, somewhere. There's a King of Kings, I believe. There's one somewhere. Yes, it is. There's a King of Kings, I believe. Yeah. There's one somewhere. Yes, it is. Now if I keep on trusting my Lord, I believe one day
both sides, so I do understand the idea of singing it in its original content, the original way that it was performed. So me personally, I am a traditionalist in that sense. Okay, yes, I'm a traditionalist in that sense. I believe that studying the music, that we should know the proper original content, the original delivery for historical content. So that part should be kept. And as a, let's say, a grad student or a master's student, a PhD student, DMA, I think performing those pieces in the original context is fine to keep the originality. However, for this younger generation, we associate those broken English or Ebonics, especially during that time, with minstrels. So the minstrels were the total opposite of what we are doing with the a cappella choir. So those, even though these both are forms of entertainment, the a cappella choir is still a high quality academic form of music, but you use the same language, same structure with minstrel music or music that is used to degrade African Americans. So the idea is trying to use the same terminology in both when you have a negative connotation to the way that it's presented, like saying terms like fitting to go somewhere and get down, Lordy, and we want to, if we're going to sing elevated music, we want to make sure that no matter who's in the crowd, that we can always be at a high quality on both sides. So we're not thinking lower of the choir because they're using these terminologies, but even as a director, I want to make sure that the perception of the college, the institution, the students are not in the negative viewing. So we want to make sure that if we know better, let's do better. So the spiritual early gospel comes from the ideas during slavery. This was on Sunday was actually a free day. So during this free day, slave masters would actually take the slaves to church. And this is also the idea of like dressing up on Sunday, so they were wearing their Sunday best because this was the only thing that they had to wear. As far as the music, they sat in church and they would heard these hymns being performed in white congregations, and they often emulated these songs. So these are not necessarily true African American words or lyrics or stories. They are just reinterpretations of earlier hymns in different denominations. Also, you have this idea of church in the wild. So these are when the African Americans left the church and they have their own practices to keep up with their own African traditions in the wild. So in like little circles of powwows, or what we call revivals. So these are a mix of both, where we're keeping the ideas of singing in groups. Anybody can sing the melody, call and response. Again, adding simple instruments, because during this time in church, the instruments were not allowed, especially during the 1800s. However, when popular music, it's almost like a pendulum. So whatever's in popular music eventually leads back into the church. So church only had singing, early church only had singing for men. Then, they start having women singing in popular music, then women started singing. Then we had in popular music, you have the organ, and the organ was the first instrument to come into church. And then you had the idea of the piano, then it came into the church. Then even the blues. Music today is heavily based on blues and gospel, but at once upon a time, it was considered the devil's music, and now it's incorporated. Even today, when you have hip hop, a lot of older people don't understand why it's hip hop, so popular, but with the younger generation, we actually have hip hop gospel. So with the spiritual, it's just a pendulum going back and forth, borrowing from a lot of different elements. We hear one thing in one setting, and we take it and we make it our own, and we present it into a new way, a catchier, a more emotional. But the thing, again, like call and response, shouting, improvisation, all those things are African, but we're just incorporating it with newer genres that we ran into. What led the newer directors to follow in that tradition? It's just the repertoire, cornerstone piece of repertoire that all choir should perform. In music education, we are given a list of these are the cornerstone pieces, and a lot of these pieces are found on that list, and so we have to make sure that we fall in line with the actual protocol that is stated before. So the SATB, no matter if it's a spiritual or a piece by Mozart or a piece by Beethoven, all of them follow that four-part vocal combination. So we can leave a spiritual and sing something from the antiquity, something from the classical period, romantic period, with the same ensemble. So that's the beauty of the choir. We can sing anything from any musical background, but just for African Americans, our quote-unquote classical music starts with the spiritual. So the being universal in a sense to being able to sing anything and staying true to the traditions of earlier music. There are others that are newer, but this is the closest one they can actually have to the choir that was actually under Miss Natalie Doxey. And interviewing multiple people during that time frame, I think I interviewed Miss Gibson yesterday, who was an interim band director here, and she was actually on that recording. She was talking to me, just describing me through the recording process. They actually recorded at Asbury. It's a two-side album. They did the one side in the morning and the two side in the afternoon. And the idea she was reiterating about earlier recordings, that it was so much pressure on touring and going out raising money for the college, that the idea of recording wasn't there in the late 1960s, early 1970s, and this was the very first push, from my understanding, to actually get a recording of the choir. So I'm in search, if you know anything about anything earlier, but this is, for research purposes, the first recording. It just happened to be after she retired, so that's kind of an interesting point. I know that I know they had I have documentation of the state of Mississippi giving them an honor, and I know they had to put together a packet, so it lists out all the recordings. I think ending in like early 2000s. So from the 70s to the early 2000s, they have a list. I know all of them are registered from the Library of Congress. So there are popular, that were made copies of. They are registered, copyrighted songs with Russ College. But I guess my major concern right now is on Natalie Doxey. You know, like, I do understand that we do have later material. I'm very interested in learning or listening to this material, doing a content analysis. I know that would be my very next step of seeing, just breaking down the genres of music that they actually sang. And what I'm learning is that it's heavily gospel, heavily spiritual, but if we get into the musical academics of any other institution, that, you know, we need to make sure that we sing something from, or perform something from every main genre. Again, Renaissance, classical, Baroque, romantic, classical, romantic, 20th century, but the spirituals come from 20th century music, and we do heavy. I understand that's our background, that's who we are, but we need to make sure that we diversify. And I want to make sure that when we do go through and listen to the newer recordings, how many other pieces did they sing from other genres, how many classical, other major composers, and still, again, in search of anything that's been recorded, especially from under the direction of Miss Natalie Doxey. So I know that's my #1 priority. If y'all know anything, please let me know. But I will be, I know, in contact with you to get the rest of the recordings from the a cappella choir. So do I feel that the success of the Russ College a cappella choir is like you said, through the heavy involvement of gospel and spirituals versus a more rounded repertoire? Again, it's pros and cons on both sides. I say that yes, because you are fitting into the expectations of your tour. A lot of people on tour are already expecting these songs. They already have a list in their mind. They already want to feel a certain way when the spiritual starts off. They already have it made up in their mind. This is what I heard from the choir all my life. So they are looking for these particular pieces to be performed. On the other side of that notion, as an academic myself and aspiring to reestablish, redevelop, rebrand the music department, we have to make sure that Rest College fits into the fold of the overall music community. And so that we have to make sure that our students, we can't just put out music majors that only sing gospel. We can't put out music majors who only do spirituals. And even though that is a selling point for us, we got to make sure that you can go into any situation and it can become successful. So I want to make sure that we don't purposely handicap a student here, quote unquote, trying to stick with tradition. So again, we could focus on what made Rest College Choir Rest College, but at the same time, we need to branch off, become more involved, probably build a partnership with the University of Mississippi, Lamar Owens. I know we have a partnership with University of Memphis, so just make sure that we can develop students who can go anywhere and become successful in any music program. So that's my main thing. Understanding where we came from, incorporating to what we're doing now, but preparing you for the very next step.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman, for this informative, interesting, most interesting presentation. I look forward to seeing the completed dissertation. Thank you for coming, for listening to us, and for supporting the humanities. Thank you.